Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make an easy chocolate cake with a milk chocolate frosting. And now this can be made in an 8-inch square cake tin or a 9-inch round cake tin, whichever you have. So the choice is yours. And it's not difficult, and it only takes the time really for the cake to bake and to cool down. But a lot of that time is waiting for the cake to cool down and for the frosting just to chill and set up basically. So I start off by preheating my oven to 160 degrees Celsius, 140 Celsius with a fan, 325 Fahrenheit, and I have greased and lined, in my case, a 9-inch round cake tin, and I have floured the sides as well, just so that the cake doesn't stick. And I'll go on to the ingredients. And this is going to be a rich cake because I'm using cocoa powder and dark chocolate. So I have 150 grams, which is 3/4 of a cup of caster sugar, 90 grams, which is half a cup plus 1.5 tablespoons, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 113 grams, which is 4 ounces of a dark chocolate, and I'm using a 70% cocoa solid dark chocolate. And I have 40 grams, 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder. I have 2 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA, and I will beat those before I use them. I have 80 milliliters, 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, 120 milliliters, half a cup of milk, 5 milliliters, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1.5 grams, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1 gram, 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. And then for the chocolate frosting, I have 227 grams, which is 8 ounces of a milk chocolate. I'm going to use 80 milliliters, 1/3 of a cup of double cream, and 113 grams, half a cup of unsalted butter, but I'll put those to one side for the time being. And the first thing I'm going to do is to mix together the dry ingredients. So I'm simply going to put my flour, salt and baking soda into the sugar. I'm going to give those a mix around. And that's good enough, and I'll set those to one side. And then the next thing to do is to get the wet ingredients ready. And for that, I'm going to put my milk into a saucepan. I'm going to add into that my dark chocolate and my cocoa powder, and I'm going to mix those around. And then I'm going to put those onto a low heat, and I'm just going to heat that up. You don't need to see that until it's warmed through and the chocolate has melted, and I'll stir it from time to time until I have a nice glossy chocolate, cocoa and milk mixture. And once I've got that, I'll come back and show you what that looks like. So my chocolate and cocoa powder have mixed nicely into the milk, and that's now quite hot, so I'm going to leave that to sit for 5 minutes. So my chocolate mixture has been sitting for 5 minutes, and I'm going to put in my vanilla extract and my oil. I'm just going to whisk those through. That will reduce the temperature even more. And then I'll add in my beaten egg as well. And I'll whisk those through to get those fully combined. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to add in my dry ingredients, and I'm going to mix those through. Until they're fully combined. And that's good. So that can then go into our prepared cake pan. I'll just shake that to level it off. A little bit, and then I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for 30 minutes or so, 30 to 35 minutes, and I'll test it with a skewer, and when the skewer comes out clean, I'll take it out of the oven and I'll leave it in the tin to cool completely. And while the cake is baking and cooling, we'll go on to make the frosting. And to make the frosting, I'm going to, I've stood my bowl on a pan of hot water, but the water is not touching the bowl. I'm going to bring the water up to a simmer, but it mustn't touch the bowl as it's simmering. And I'm going to put my chocolate in, that's the milk chocolate, and my 1/3 of a cup or 80 millilitres of cream. And I'm going to put that onto the heat and simmer it gently until it completely melts, and I can stir it into a nice frosting. So I've got that on a fairly gentle heat, and I'm just going to leave that, and I'll come back when it's simmering and it's starting to melt, so you can see how it looks. So my water is now simmering, and the chocolate and the cream will start to heat up and will begin to melt. And as they begin to melt, I'll give them the occasional stir to make sure that they all combine nicely. And it's going to take 10 minutes or so, maybe even 15 minutes. I'm doing it on a fairly gentle simmer, and then once that's fully combined, that's ready to have the butter mixed through and off the heat, of course, to make our frosting. So I'll stir it just so that you can see that the chocolate is beginning to melt. And I'll leave that and come back and stir it a little bit more. And then once it's completely melted and mixed together, I'll come back and we'll add our butter. My chocolate and cream have melted together quite nicely, and I'm going to add in my butter, and I'm going to stir that through, and the heat of the chocolate should melt the butter. And that's good like that. So that's all I need to do for my frosting, and I'm going to leave that until it's cooled, and you can put it in the fridge and it will cool quicker in the fridge if you want to, and then before we actually use it I'm going to whisk it up again until it goes nice and pale, and then that will be ready to spread on the top of our cake once that has also cooled down. So here's my cake, and I baked mine for 30 minutes and I tested it with a skewer, which came out clean. So I'm going to leave that in the tin until it's cooled completely, and by that time my chocolate frosting should also be cooled down, and we'll be able to put that on the top. So my cake has cooled down and I've taken it out of the tin, and my frosting has cooled down as well. So I'm going to whisk it, and I'm going to keep whisking it until it goes paler. And you could do this with a hand mixer if you wanted to. And that's good enough. So I'm simply going to put that onto my cake and spread it over. Pushing it down towards the edge. And that's good like that. So I'm actually going to put that into the fridge for 15 minutes just to chill that frosting a little bit more. Then I'm going to cut a slice and we'll have a taste. So I've now cut a slice of the cake and I'll have a taste of it. And it looks very good, as you can see. That is very, very good. The lovely richness of the chocolate cake, which is nice and moist, and then the soft and creamy milk chocolate frosting goes very well with it indeed. So it's not a difficult recipe, it does take a little bit of time, and as I said, you can do this in a 9-inch round tin or an 8-inch square tin. You could even double the recipe and do it in a 13 by 9 baking tray if you wanted to. So that's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there'll be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.